Thank you so much for joining us on At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. The City of Peoria Council held a policy session 2 nights ago, and they discussed economic development. It's an area that hasn't been paid much attention to recently. In fact, they haven't had a director for maybe 5 years or so. So we're going to talk about economic development in just a moment, but a few other things of the city business that we need to discuss, and we're going to do that with Ross Black, who is the director of the Community Development Department at the City of Peoria. Ross, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
The mayor is here. Always good to have you, Mayor. Jim Ardis, the mayor of Peoria, thank you. And Patrick Urich, the city manager for the City of Peoria. And with that, let's start with what everyone is talking about. Salt, cold, potholes, etc. Where are we in terms of trying to keep the roads in somewhat passable shape?
Well, this has been a tough winter for us. This is one of the snowiest winters we've had in a number of years. As we've looked at that, we've spent nearly $1.9 million on the snow events through February 18th. It's been a tough year. We're starting to see right now, as the weather has warmed and the snow has melted away, that our potholes have increased. We had actually 2.5 years worth of road salt in stock for us. We were able to use most of that. Unfortunately, it's a situation where we've spent significantly more than we had budgeted over the last couple of years. The last 2 years have been outliers for us simply because we didn't see as much snow as we have in this year. And then this year was really kind of going in the other direction where we've seen far more snow than we anticipated.
Councilwoman Beth Akeson pointed out that, and if her numbers are correct, there's 480 miles of streets in the city. The Public Works Department has maybe half the staff it did 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Has that been a problem in trying to keep up with that many miles of road with less staff?
No, we've done a remarkable job of using the staff that we have, using temporary employees during the winter time, and then also using contract employees. And we've been able to reduce the number of snow routes that we have, but we've got a policy in place where the staff are out when we get 2 or more inches of snow. They move into the residential streets, but they focus on the primary routes before then. And our goal is to have the streets drivable and passable within 18 hours of the end of the snowstorm. And we've been really good this year on the primary routes, and we've been really responsive, I feel, on the residential streets as well.
You've had lots of practice so far this winter.
Quite a bit.
Second snowiest season in Peoria's history. Let's turn to the State of the City address, Mayor. In that, you mentioned that you and Mayor Morrissey up in Rockford and Danville and several other communities, medium-sized communities, are in the process of forming a 501c organization so that you can bring more attention to the needs of those sized communities in Springfield. Where does that stand?
Well, H, we've gotten the information put together. The attorneys are filing it soon. I don't know if I haven't heard if it's actually been, the paperwork has been filed for the not-for-profit, but the mayors, the other mayors and I are actively meeting and talking right now, just strategizing some of the things that we may be able to go down into Springfield and talk about. We all have similar issues when it comes to some of the urban problems, and then we all have issues outside of that scope. The problem really with going down to Springfield this year with the elections is there's not a real high confidence level of a lot of work going to get done. So we're trying to be smart about what we decide to go down and push as our first big effort.
Although the City Council doesn't have direct impact on education, is education one of the topics that you've been discussing with other mayors?
It is, and really that's the one that's most concerning to all the other mayors too. We all have situations in our cities, bar none, that have more than one school district within the city. So you're not just dealing with one school district, but we all have the common thread is that we have the older school district that represents the majority of the urban part of their cities, or our cities, is struggling. And so as we've talked before, we all acknowledge that the number one issue that prohibits our cities from growing is that negative perception of the school system. And so that's why that topic of education is very important to us. We don't have any control over our schools. and they're having the #1 negative impact on our ability to grow. So it's at the top of our list in terms of areas that we want to try to figure out how we can make that better.
The mayor mentioned education, and I should point out that here on At Issue in 3 weeks, on March 20th, we will have the superintendent of District 150 in Peoria, Grenita Lathan, on the program. Let me turn back to the city manager and ask, you've been working on an agreement, a new agreement with the water company.
That's correct.
Up to this point, dating back to the 1800s, there's been an every 5-year window where the city could negotiate the possible buyout of the water company. How might that agreement change?
What we've been looking at is changing that franchise agreement, looking at a 20-year franchise agreement that would, in essence, eliminate the 5-year buyout provision for that 20-year period of time. And in consideration of that, there would be additional revenue that would come back to the city in the form of franchise fees and some additional permit revenues that would net the city roughly $2.2 million of additional revenue to be used for infrastructure purposes for that foreseeable future. We're working on this agreement with the Illinois American Water right now. We hope to have it wrapped up by the end of this week. And then the plan would be that we would roll it out to the public and give the public ample time to look at it, to understand what it meant, hold a couple of meetings both in South Peoria and in North Peoria so that we could explain to the public what this potential franchise agreement would entail.
$2.2 million over what time frame?
Over $2.2 million annually over a 20-year period of time.
And so it would be every 20 years that you would have a window to look at the possible buyout?
Yes, that's correct.
And 2 nights ago, Mayor, the City Council approved an agreement between neighbors and the Board of Expo Gardens on limiting certain activities during certain hours and within certain confines. It seemed to have been a rather smooth process, different from the one over the Louisville Slugger complex. Is this a new approach? Is this how the city wants to look at these kinds of disputes in the future?
I would say that it's not a new approach, and the approaches were very similar. Although the Expo Gardens discussion didn't catch quite the media wind or attention that Louisville Slugger did, the processes were the same. Council members in the district held small meetings within their districts to discuss the projects within those neighbors. We still had the same planning meetings and zoning meetings, so the processes were very similar. It was just more of a media hype on the Louisville project as opposed to Expo.
Might it have been that the Louisville Slugger was a new complex where Expo is already established?
Yeah, I'd say that's part of it. And, a lot of people, and really outside of both those areas, the Expo area and the Louisville area, there wasn't a whole lot of other discussion in the city about them. I mean, it really, for the most part, impacts those neighborhoods right surrounding them. So, frankly, the Expo discussion didn't get a whole lot of discussion in the community, and outside of the people that lived in close proximity to the Louisville Slugger, the community was very excited about that project because of the attributes of it and what it's going to bring to Peoria.
The warehouse district has seen close to $30 million worth of infrastructure improvement, or at least in the process of seeing that improvement. When will we hear an announcement on one of those key warehouses, a developer coming in and saying, I'm going to do X with that warehouse?
Well, I think if you're looking for someone to come in and have this big explosive announcement that it's going to be this turn the warehouse district on its ear with one announcement, that's not on the horizon. I will tell you that we have a number which is not just one. We have a number of different people that are looking at several different properties. A couple of them have already closed on specific properties. So I think that we'll be hearing a group of announcements this spring and summer about projects in the warehouse district that are, this is an area that we've been working on for a long time. And what we've acknowledged that the likelihood of us landing some company that's going to employ 2,000 people and provide all this spinoff is not very likely. But the reality is it's going to be a gradual group of businesses that are going to come in and will gain momentum as we go. We'll be hearing, I'm very confident to say we'll be hearing a couple announcements before summer.
Can you share what type of projects those might be?
To build on the mayor's comments, I would just point to our friends down the road in Normal. And if you look at what Uptown Normal did with their redevelopment of their central business district, it took 20 years to get it to the point where it's at today. And they've been working a very long time on that. We're still in the process of implementing the infrastructure improvements in the area. Many of the people that have been talking to the property owners in that area are looking at mixed-use buildings. They're looking at trying to acquire them for both housing, residential, and commercial. So there's some unique opportunities that we're hopeful will be popping, and as the mayor said, that we're going to hear about that earlier this year or later this year.
We're on the topic of economic development, so let's turn to the person who is most responsible for that right now in the city, and that's Ross Black. You, 2 nights ago at the council meeting, there was a policy session, and you made a presentation along with your staff. You pointed, I'm going to look at some positives and things that you're going to do, but you pointed out several things that the city has not been doing. For instance, no loans from the revolving loan fund for 3+ years, and 2 major loans are in default.
Correct.
Can you explain the revolving loan fund for the audience and how you might turn that around?
Sure. The revolving loan fund was initially funded with a grant fund from the federal government, along with some matching funds from local funds. And it's designed to be a subordinate loan program. So someone wants to open a business, expand the business, they would get a private loan from a private lender, and then the city would help to bridge the gap, if you will, in the financing by providing some funds from this revolving loan fund. By definition, it's revolving, so as the payments come back in, then the funds would be available for new businesses and for expansion. Really what happened with a revolving loan fund is there were a couple of loans that went bad, that went into default, because again, by definition, these loans are somewhat risky. If they weren't somewhat risky, then the business owners probably would not need to use this revolving loan fund. They could get all of their financing from private sources. And so we had a couple of defaults, and then with the reduction in the number of staff in the economic development function over the last few years, we just simply haven't had the opportunity to market the program as we should. So some changes to the program guidelines will be coming back to council over the next couple of months. And then with the additional staff that council has enabled us to have through the budget process, we'll be able to get up and rolling and provide these funds again in partnership with local private lenders.
Before we continue on your list of improvements, Patrick, how long has it been since there's been an economic development director? Because you rolled that department. When Craig Hullinger left, you rolled that department into Ross's department.
Craig left in 2009, I believe, when the city offered a voluntary separation plan for employees during the downturn in the economy, which is, to the revolving loan fund is one of the other major factors, is that the lending environment has changed. There aren't a lot of commercial loans that are being loaned out at this period of time, let alone a loan program that's designed to be subordinate to those commercial loans. So we haven't had an economic development director since 2009. I think that's an issue for us, and it's one of the key challenges for Director Black as he moves forward, is how to fill that critical position to lead the economic development efforts for the city.
And that position will be filled by the end of the second quarter.
We're hopeful.
So let's turn back to Ross, and you 2 nights ago you said there's been no good exchange of thought between the city and business owners. What did you mean by that, and what impact is that having?
Well, there's been no formal exchange. We certainly have conversations with business owners all the time, but there's been no formal outreach process. Many communities have a plan, a program in place where city employees, sometimes with partners from the Chamber of Commerce, sometimes with partners from the Regional Economic Development Organization, will go out on business visits. Sometimes they're called business retention and expansion visits. Sometimes they're just called business outreach visits. But it's really an opportunity for city staff and for regional economic development staff to sit down with the business owners who are actually creating the jobs and talk to them about what they're seeing in the local environment, what needs they may have, and then create some linkage with what the city could provide to them to help them as business owners. That's the program that we need to put into place.
More proactive than reactive.
Absolutely.
Another point you made was that there is no established measurement of success for economic development. What are you looking at for those measuring tools?
What we're going to do is the ICMA organization, the International City Managers Association, has a performance measurement program that a couple of hundred communities in the nation participate in, and they look at different aspects of local government, everything from fire service to economic development to code enforcement, and it allows communities to look at the same aspects across all sorts of sizes and shapes and locations of cities and really benchmark how we are doing. One of the problems with economic development and the measure of economic development is much of the work can end up not turning out to be something that is particularly tangible. If, just for example, if we go out and meet with 50 business owners in a given year, then to me that's a wonderful thing. We've talked to 50 of the people who are providing the jobs and creating the jobs in the community. But beyond just that measurement of we did the meetings, there's nothing, we can't necessarily say because we had these meetings there were 30 jobs created or a company decided to expand. So that's where it gets a little tricky in terms of measuring the success of economic development.
One of the tools for economic development, Mayor, is the enterprise zone. How significant is that in your estimation?
Well, I think all of the tools that we have available are significant in this day and age, just because we really can't rely on any big help from Springfield and Washington, D.C. You know, we have been successful in getting legislation done for some state and federal historic tax credits. The River's Edge redevelopment initiative provides opportunities for us, but you know, as competitive as it is for all of our cities, or between all of our cities, to try to attract new businesses and opportunities to grow existing businesses, there aren't that many different tools that we have to incentivize those businesses to come. So whether it's enterprise zone or TIF, business improvement districts, a number of these different tools that communities our size use for these type of things, they're all extremely important because none of us are flush with cash to say, here's a pile of cash to come in and set up shop here.
And that is particularly important because the enterprise zone, that's legislation, and it's a competitive process that you apply for?
It is. We will have to apply by the end of the year to basically reset the enterprise zone inside the city's boundaries, and we'll be competing against other communities in the region and other communities across the state for the recertification of our enterprise zone. So I think we have a compelling case to make when you look at the city of Peoria and some of the issues that we have to deal with and the evaluation criteria the state is going to look at. But it's important that we build upon that and focus our efforts. And it's going to take having a policy discussion with the council to make sure that we're addressing the areas they want us to focus on with that application as well.
And that's one of your goals for the remainder of this year, is to present that application to council.
Yes, second quarter of this year we will come back to council with the outline of the application for the new enterprise zone, which is due to the state by the end of the year.
You'll also bring the revolving loan fund, a rework of the revolving loan fund to
Absolutely.
the council?
Yes.
What about CDBG funds?
We'll do the same with that, and with all of the programs that we have, either programs that are in existence right now that just need to be retooled, or new programs because of new funding and opportunities that we find available. I mean, in economic development, the way I look at it is there's really three components. There are people, there's the programs, and there's the process. We have the right people, with the exception of the vacant position we have right now. We've got the right people at the table. Process we've been working on for a very long time, last year and a half. We continue to try and simplify and make our process easier, because to go back to an analogy of perhaps potholes, it's difficult to drive down a street full of potholes. It's also difficult to do development if there are procedural potholes in your way. So we're trying to fill those procedural potholes by making the process simpler. And then the third component are the programs. And as the mayor indicated, we have limited programs that we can make available. And one of the reasons that we need to get out and talk to the business community is we need to tailor these programs to what the business community needs. It doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be my idea of what the business community needs in terms of programs. It has to be what the business creators need in the programs.
I mentioned CDBG, and for those of you that aren't familiar with the acronym, Community Development Block Grant. One of the processes or programs, I'm not sure where it would fall, but is the Virtual Development Center. What might that be, and how might that help it? Because remember that it's no secret the city of Peoria has a reputation, whether it's earned or not, that it's easier to do business elsewhere. Is this part of that step to say, no, really you can do business in Peoria?
Well, I would disagree that it's necessarily easier to do business elsewhere. However, yes, I think the Virtual Development Center will make doing business with the city easier. And just to give an example, if someone decides that they would like to expand their small restaurant right now, they want to add on, or they want to move to a different location in town, the reality is with the technology that we have, or the lack thereof, they have to talk to someone between 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. The information that they really need is not readily accessible to them online, that they can just go to at 3 o'clock in the morning if that happens to be when they're thinking about it. That's a big part of it. The second step is to allow people to actually apply for consideration for programs or for applications for approval online versus having to come down to City Hall, although we love it when people come to City Hall, to come down to City Hall and fill out a piece of paper that we then process.
You mentioned a business registration program. In 2 sentences, what is that?
Business registration program, a lot of communities either have business registration or business licensing programs. Sometimes they're interrelated, but basically it allows the community to collect basic information about the businesses in town so that we can have a better conversation with the businesses. We have better knowledge of what is out there, and then we can create some business-to-business links that are difficult to create if you simply don't know who's out there.
Tuesday night, Mayor, Council Member Ryan Spain said he wasn't too enthralled with the idea of a business registration. He wanted to know more. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think that even when there are new ideas on something that we haven't thought of before, the one thing that we don't want to do is put a perception out there that we're trying to create more of a bureaucracy than we already have. And I don't see that as this. This is really, I put that in this in the category of data mining. You know, you can't know what's out there and what they may need for assistance if you don't know what's out there. It's the known unknown, as some people would say. So the way I read Ross's analogy or discussion on this is that we just need to know what's out there. We can't tell you how many of A business or B business or C business is out there right now. So it's just data mining for us and capturing those assets and understanding, you know, what we have in the community. It's also a good tool to say what we don't have in our community, and helps us, you know, when we're talking to businesses about coming to Peoria, the advantages of doing business here, we know what we don't have too.
A final thought, Patrick. Aldi closed on the south side.
Yes.
There's kind of a food desert down there right now. Might economic development, if it had been more established in the city, might that have made a difference in trying to keep, if not Aldi, some sort of grocery store down there?
I don't know if we could say that it would have kept Aldi there. I think that it may have allowed us to know sooner that they were planning on leaving. If we had a more robust business retention, expansion, or outreach program, we might have been able to identify any issues that they were seeing in the neighborhood and then trying to be more proactive with that. So that's the advantage of having the outreach programs in place, is that you're able to do that. Sometimes corporations make big decisions. This isn't the first time Aldi has made changes in the Peoria region in terms of moving locations. So I think you'd have to look at it in the larger sense of having an outreach program allows us to really work towards understanding the needs of those specific businesses in those specific neighborhoods.
And with that, we are out of time. I'd like to continue the conversation, and we'll invite you all back. But let me say thank you to Ross Black and to Patrick Urich, the Community Development Director for the city, and the City Manager.
Thank you.
And of course, the Mayor of the City of Peoria, Jim Ardis. Thank you all
H.
three for the discussion.
Thank you.
We're taking a couple of weeks off at that issue. We'll be back on March the 20th with a discussion with Grenita Lathan, the Superintendent of District 150. And then on March 27th, it's an analysis of Governor Quinn's budget address that was presented the day before that program airs. If you have the Channel 47 program guide, please remember that those two shows are reversed in the program. We made a clerical error. So Grenita Lathan on the 20th and an analysis of the Quinn address on the 27th. We'll see you then on At Issue. We'll wait for the all clear.
Sounds good.